see my screen now? Bharat or somebody, can you confirm?
Yeah, it's visible.
All right, just give me 1 second. Is it visible now? Bharat or someone, can you confirm?
It's visible, Siva.
Okay, great. Thank you. Good morning, good evening, everyone. So today's session, it's about this topic around, what we call as redefining or reimagining business intelligence, with conversational approach. What exactly do I mean by conversational approach? I'll talk about it. So just quick introduction, again, this event is organized by iLink Digital. purpleSlate is one of the entity, part of the iLink family. And what we do, we specialize in technologies around conversational AI. Okay. Basically, one of the primary driver, or rather, what we believe is machines are increasingly getting better at understanding the language we speak, or rather, language is really becoming one of the key interfaces. I'm sure most of us would have experienced a version of it in the form of, say, an Alexa device or Siri or OK Google, and those are all, which we have for our common usage in, for our personal life. I think more and more, I think that experience in terms of getting access to services or information is more and more being used even within enterprises for various use cases. And one such is around this area called business intelligence. Where we really feel, we have a solution, and we have an approach in terms of how conversations could be used to consume business intelligence data and analytics and all that. So this is myself, Sivaram Parmeshwar, and I'm one of the co-founders of this company, and I take care of the product strategy. And pretty much before purpleSlate, I'd done a significant portion of my career in the space of data science, data engineering, in most the Wall Street firms. So let me start with a problem statement, or rather, why we even think this kind of solution would be, or rather, it's even more relevant today. If you have spent, if you are a business intelligence application user, or if you're responsible for data strategy or data related applications, this is one very common, a problem, which is, it's across the industry. It's more like looking for information. It is almost like data everywhere, but at the same time, not a byte, or rather, it is very difficult to get access to information. Right? It has always been a challenge. That's what normally we try to solve, with various business intelligence applications and all that. But at the same time, still, as the data volume really grows across the enterprises, right? This problem only gets amplified, and there are some statistics which I've given, one such as 20 to 30% of a typical day is spent on looking for information, right? But you contrast that to our normal life, where pretty much our information needs are satisfied by the popular search engines, right? For anything and everything, we immediately, or rather, we are very comfortable getting that information, using the popular search engines. So, but unfortunately, if when we come into an enterprise, or for however, as whatever size it is, I think it is still a challenge when we try to get access to information, right? So this is again, and just to set the context, I've just tried to summarize the reality of what I call as, today's data-rich digital world. Almost every enterprise is spending huge amounts of money, in digital transformation and digitization and all that. But so what is that is really causing us, I mean, you have an ever increasing data sets, our ability to capture and store large volume of data has grown tremendously, right? But at the same time, as I said, even I talked about in the previous slide, the users still struggle to get access to quality data, right? And more and more, I mean, especially our life becoming more digital, data-driven
Somehow I don't have sketch.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Did I hear someone saying something? Is my audio? I mean, is my voice audible? Any issues with the slides? Can someone confirm?
It's all good.
It is good.
Okay, great. Thank you. So, I mean, there is more and more, what we call is the increasing need for momentary access to information, right? I mean, whether we are with a customer or whether, we are in a meeting, it is almost like, today, any data, I mean, it is all about, hey, I mean, say, for example, you're talking to a customer, hey, I mean, there is a discussion around project quality. Hey, how many defects did we have last month? Is it trending up or down? How much was it, on a similar time period before? Or, I mean, it is like, say, if you're reviewing your sales performance, with in a meeting, it is more like, hey, how much, where are we really doing well? Where are we not doing well? How is the money flowing and how is it flowing? All these are, questions which we try to get, answered through data, right? And also some, I mean, what is also becoming, especially with the growth of tremendous amount of data, is what I call as the unknown unknowns. There are those so obvious questions, where we are able to get the answer. At the same time, with the heavy volume of data, it is also those hidden insights. How do we really get visibility into those? And the other, especially in large organizations, the point number 5 and 6 are also something which is very significant. You have so many different BI tool sets, one for reporting, one for dashboarding, another one for self-service analytics. You have your own data science tool sets. I mean, it's so fragmented, and then there are just so many, right? At the same time, and the 6 is also, unfortunately, it is a very common scenario where, despite all these investments, whether it is in the data engineering space or the data analytics space, we still companies struggle to get the ROI for these investments are still kind of questionable, right? The other thing, I would also, when I say what I really mean by the momentary information needs, I've just given a few examples here, right? Say, for example, if you are running an e-commerce site, and if you're using Google Analytics, so the very common questions could be something like, hey, what pages do users use the most? How many users did we have today, versus yesterday? Or, I mean, these are all again questions. This is what we really use for our day-to-day decision making, right? The way we consume, or rather, the way we get answers to these could be different. It could be through a dashboard or a report. We do slicing and dicing. We could be analyzing in Excel sheets and all that. But at the same time, at the end of the day, what we're really trying to do with all these different tool sets, it's basically trying to get answers to questions like these, right? So this is what I mean. I really call as I mean, just like how we use the popular search engines today. Hey, what is the weather? What happened to this? The basketball game last night. Even to check the course and all that. The way we go to the search engines, I think similar behavior would be a lot more suitable today, for even for enterprise data, right? And in contrast to that, the third one is also, as I said, because of, I mean, especially these days of increased digitalization and all that, our modern day needs for data has also changed. Getting something like, getting answers from insights from very, very large volume of data, high velocity, high different variety, and all that. Right? And exactly like the way, how we use the popular search engine. Can I really replicate the same behavior where, I really do not have to go through multiple reports? I just ask a question. Can I replicate the similar behavior even for my enterprise data, right? And also, it's not just about getting the answers. What do we do after that? I mean, say, for example, if this is something, I really need to check with somebody, I take a snapshot of it, send it as an email, or put it in my collaboration platform, and then, the exchange goes back and forth. How do we really collaborate? How do we really take actions on these insights, right? All these are, the way we consume data, the way we, work around the data, right? At the same time, the way we use these tools, it also has to match the agility or the scale with which our business operates and all that, right? So just to give an example, this is something, a very interesting insight, which I found in one of the HBR articles recently, which kind of summarizes the today's scenario. Say it's like many of the stuff, it happens like within a minute or few hours, right? Like booking a cab to even a flight journey and all that. Unfortunately, what you see in the right side, getting access to information, it is still time consuming. Just some statistics in terms of average 4 to 5 business days. Why should that not be like any other the modern day digital experience we have, right? That's everything else have become a in this fast-paced world. Everything else is getting accomplished in a very, very short period of time. Why shouldn't data access be such as well, right? So those are all some of the drivers. And so basically, if I have to sum it up, this is how do we really make the enterprise data, how big or small and all that, very easily available, very easily accessible to everyone. It's basically to the frontline users, how do we really provide them access to this information very fast or in a very, very simple interface, right? So that's kind of the goal of the problem statement, right? So with this setting, let me also quickly take you through a few slides, to set the context. What exactly, how is this really going to help us, in terms of what we're talking about in a conversational AI space and all that, right? So just to give you an idea, when we say the rise of conversational AI, I'm sure, all of us would have experienced in some form of it, which is like the chatbot, which is almost there in every other website today, right? But what is really happening is the conversational AI related technologies and solutions also are growing or rather maturing at a very, very high pace. It pace in terms of can it really. So these are all some of the factors which we could use to judge a very good conversational AI solution. It's something like, hey, can it really talk text to text, right? So basically, we are talking about the interface modes. Can it really understand? For the fundamental thing for conversations is your ability to listen or rather understand before we can respond, right? So how good is the language understanding skills? Can it learn continuously? Because machines or any machine learning or AI driven application matures over a period of time, right? Just like how even the human context, we get better at something, over a period of time, right? So can it really continuously learn? Can it mature continuously and all that, right? Does it know in the sense what this exactly means is, at the end of the day, you are using a conversational AI solution, to get things done or to get some answers. So does it have the enough information or the data, to even respond or provide the action, right? And can it be useful? This is the bottom line, right? Does it serve a purpose? Is it really going to help us achieve, what we want to achieve, right? The second thing is, since we are really talking about business intelligence and data analytics, right? Just to give you a context of how the information systems have really evolved over a period of time, starting from the typical mainframe computers or the legacy mainframe computers, and which is where this whole history of data processing really started. And then we started consuming the information in the form of, say, reports to spreadsheets driven by the personal computer revolution, and then we have BI and dashboards, and then of course the smartphones kind of triggered the mobile BI area, where we just had the requirement to access the information on our smartphones. What you really see on the x-axis is, as the systems matured, as the technology matured, your access, or rather the time taken for access is it's significantly reducing. Now the next question is, when I have something like, I have a question right now, which is more like the momentary information need. How is this really going to be, right? I think that's where we are talking about, this area called conversational insights, which could, just like how I might ask another individual. When I have a question, I may be asking the person next to me, if they are knowledgeable, or rather, the way we are asking the search engine today, right? So that kind of similar approach is what, we think would be the next, or rather, the next step in the evolution of, information systems. More like, how does it really help us with the momentary information need, using a conversational approach. The second thing is, this also aligns well with the way humans, we always consume information. One is, whenever we have question, basically I need an answer, right? What happens, once we get the answer, that kind of triggers a follow-up question, that either that leads to more questions, right? And then which again leads to, say, for example, once we have all the information, the way what we do is, hey, what do I do next? And right, which is basically supporting our decision-making process and all that. This is the way we consume information, right? It all starts with a question and then, it goes in the cycle. Today, we could be achieving this in the traditional BI platforms or dashboards and all that. But what we really feel is a conversational approach. I'll show some examples very soon, right? I think, is more ideally suited for the way, this fashion in which, we consume information. Now, another thing, just one more, just to set the context. How do we get our answers, right? So user has an information need. So we ask a trusted source. It could be a human being. We get the answers, and then, this goes in cycle till we have enough clarity, and then, which for us to make a decision, right? Given this, the way in which we consume information for decision making, but look at what we really have today, right? Which is what we really feel as, some of the challenges or the bottlenecks, right? Look at what we have today. In any organization, especially very large organization, there is a very, very common thing, what we call is the death by metrics. There are more dashboards or scorecards than even individuals. Everything for everybody, every need, there is a dashboard, so much of different metrics, right? I think this is a very, very common problem we have. The other thing is, information access is still too technical, especially when we there is some decent amount of knowledge required for you to consume that information. Even interpreting the dashboards, or even, say, for example, the true self-service BI is still an utopia, in the sense there are still, someone has to produce a dashboard for the end users to consume and all that, right? So there is definitely, there is a good amount of, the information access. It's not as simple as asking a question, right? It is still a bit technical. And of course, this is a very, very common problem, which is like the painful delays in access to information, and hence the decision making, right? Basically, if I have to go back to the cycle, getting access to a trusted source and getting the answers, this whole cycle kind of, it goes from days to months. It is extremely painful, right? So what we're really saying is the modern information access challenge, especially in today's digital world, it's not about the data capture and store. I think the technology around capture and store are so mature, or rather I would say, even the unit cost of storage has come down drastically, in the sense, we hardly delete anything these days, right? So that kind of amplifies the problem as well, because, we are accumulating, or we are collecting so much amount of data. The insights, the problem has now shifted more on the consumption layer. It is about how do we make the data available, and how do we make it easily accessible, including, how do we make it understandable, or rather, to do with the metadata management and all that, right? And to match the speed, of a business, and then how quickly can we, really make this data available. I think that's where the problem has now shifted. It's not really about the capture and store. It is more about the consumption layer, right? The other thing is also, this is more to do with the huge volume of data, which we're collecting. It is not, one is, there are two aspects of it, it is called as findability and discoverability. Findability is where I really have a question, and then how quickly or how easily can I find a solution for it, right? It is rather how easy it is for someone to locate the known data, right? The discoverability it's more about especially given the large volume or the large size of the data sets, how do I uncover hidden insights? I mean, which is something which is very latent or which is not easily visible. How do I get those insights, and how easy it is for us to uncover those insights, right? I think these are again very common use case of solution patterns which is critical for any of today's data and analytics solution, right? So having set the context in terms of what the problem is, rather how we consume information and all, right? I'll just quickly take you through, the solution aspect of it. How do we really approach this, and especially using our framework solution and all that, right? Any questions so far? I can take a quick pause. Is it too slow? Let me know. I mean, if there is any, I hope everyone is able to hear or see the slides. Hey. All right, so let me move on. I mean, now this is more towards what we say, hey, how we have approached these problems, for the modern digital world, especially, the information access, right? So what we're really saying is when your users have momentary questions on data, right? Don't let them get overwhelmed with the dashboards and metrics. Instead, can we really let them have, or rather, have a conversation, or ask just like how we would ask an individual? Can they really, or rather, get these answers by asking questions in the language? I think that's what we really mean by, or rather, what I have it as. Can we just have them just ask? I'll give an example, right? So these are all some of the examples which I'm talking about. Say if it is an insurance company, these is some of the ways in which some of our customers are consuming the information. What is this is exactly what they have in mind, when they are looking at either a data set, even if it is a simple Excel sheet or a dashboard. Basically, you have questions like this for your typical business operations, right? I think and then you try to get these answers to these questions, right? So say for example, if you have just launched a website and then it is available. You might and then if you made it available recently in your mobile platform, right? Definitely you would like to know, hey, how's the usage on the mobile platform? Is it really being used? Is it really going up, or is it trending down, right? And one of the very common use case we have is in the healthcare or the pet care space. Say so the doctors, it's like when how do they really access historical medical data? So it's like, hey, pets treated for influenza and prescribed a particular drug in a specific region. They just ask these questions in simple English, and that's where and the system or the application is kind of able to understand this and then come back with the response, right? So in fact, this particular approach, what we call as a conversational insights, there are some Gartner studies which says the natural language based approach, it's picking up very well, and then there is more and more the language based queries are picking up, or rather going in increasing in adoption, right? So here's a very simple example, right? Say I'm analyzing my sales data, right? And then say for example, if this is the question I have, which region is I'm really interested in, hey, which region is really doing well in product XYZ, right? There are two ways I could do that. The way it is most commonly done today, say you have various KPIs presented as dashboards, different metrics and scorecards and all that. That could be a dashboard where you try to get this answer. Hey, which region is really doing well? Maybe we know how to interpret these charts and then get the information. Or rather, what we're really saying is, if imagine if it was like this, you ask this question, just like say how you would ask this question to a fellow human being, right? If you can ask this to a a smart assistant or a conversation assistant and say, hey, which region is doing well? It says, hey, you know what? It is the West region with this particular profit margin or sales, and this is a number. And by the way, I mean, this is what I was telling you about findability and discoverability. The findability, it just helps you get the answer, so easily. Discoverability is, by the way, do you know that, it's been trending down, or rather, in the last 6 months, which might help me take some different actions, right? It's not just about just getting the answer to that question, which is like, which was very straightforward. What is the product XYZ? How is it really doing in this particular region? But at the same time, it is also giving me an insight, which would make that information access process that much more useful, right? So this is precisely what we call as conversational approach. I mean, as I said, the BI reports, dashboards, they all serve a purpose, but at the same time, with us, getting, or rather being very much used to search engines, can we really have an approach like, asking the question in English and still getting the answers back? That's what we really call as, a conversational, approach to business intelligence, right? So, and what is, I mean, again, the other motivation for this is more around, hey, if this is the way we have been consuming information on business intelligence, with your reports, dashboards, and metrics, how is this really going to be in the coming years, for what we call as the AI first generation, right? Obviously, you have technologies which make the language interface really possible. The language understanding skills are becoming very popular, very mature. Speech recognition technologies are becoming, very common and very popular. So how do we leverage these technologies even for something like business intelligence, right? So that is the motivation behind, a solution like this. So we have our, a product, or rather solution offering platform called Kia. So what we basically saying is, talk to your data, with Kia. So it goes something like this. Say if I have a question on, say, something like daily trend of policies by intermediate, in a particular state, it just gives me the answer, very similar to the example I was just talking about, right? So now, if based on this answer, you could be asking a follow-up question, and then you could be taking some actions. All those basically happen in a conversational mode, right? I think that is what we really call as, I mean, or rather, that's what this platform kind of offers, right? So what exactly is Kia? Our definition for our platform is more like this: smart, knowledgeable, virtual data analyst. It is almost like smart assistant or a chatbot, which is specifically designed for conversational insights. Okay, and then it can mine millions of rows of data, and then some of our use cases go up to 100 million rows of data. It is able to get you these answer back. I mean, the most important thing is you ask the questions in the language you speak. It's in simple English constructs, right? So again, taking it back to the information access flow I had shown before, right? The part where we had this, you ask a trusted source, that gets replaced with something like Kia. So that is the way, we are positioning the platform Kia as. So now, it is almost like when you have an information need, just like how you're accessing a search engine, you just train Kia on a data set and then start asking those questions to Kia, and then, which it will be able to respond back. I'll show, I mean, quite a few use cases and demos very, in a few minutes, right? Just to, I mean, that will help you understand a lot more, right? So, or rather, the problem, or rather the solution approach is more like this: how do you turn data? It could be all kinds of stuff. Into question and answers. So it's like basically very simple steps. The platform, the Kia application, kind of gets trained on your data, and then after that, you just start having a conversation, or rather, ask questions and get answers. Um, Completely, in the sense, all kinds of data sources, wherever it is, it could be a simple Excel sheet, or all kinds of databases where your Delta Lake, any big data stores. I think Kia would be able to source the data, and at the same time, and we all know that data evolves over a period of time. Whether it is real time through streams or in different frequencies, of batch processing, whether it is micro batch, or even on request. You keep updating the data, your data sets, and then Kia matures for a period of continuously, and it would be able to produce those answers. And also it is available in few ways. I mean, I'll just quickly show you, why we have these different options. I mean, as what we call as a simple search engine. This search widget, or what we call as a question widget, could be embedded in any of your application. And then, we also have an interface which is very similar to your chat platform, like Microsoft Teams, or Chat, Slack, and all that. In just like how we collaborate with our fellow human beings, like how we chat. Here, humans, and I think they can chat with Kia, on the data set. And of course, there is a mobile version of it for on the go. And so here's the Kia ecosystem, in terms of the studio is I'll show you a demo of all these, in just in a few minutes, which really helps you mature, or rather, train Kia on different data sets. And of course, you do have the different flavors of the consumption part, the viewer or the question widget, the mobile, as well as the chat application. And it's a complete a low code framework. I mean, I have just highlighted few features here. It is completely white labeled in the sense, when we by the way, Kia runs on any, it is cloud agnostic and on-prem, behind your firewall. And it can be branded. Say, for example, you can some of our customers have called it as, say, Oscar or Ginger or Twinkle. So it is completely white labeled. And then it's as it gets trained on your, it is omni-channel, like I said, responsive web applications plus mobile. And it can connect to any data source, any size and simple. I mean, you can start asking questions in simple English constructs, diverse visualization support. And at the same time, I mean, there is also a good amount of security built behind the scenes. Obviously, any data application today, it has to be secured by design. Its ability to even as simple as masking PII data, to managing data access, providing support for role-based access control and all that. I think, and of course, there is also one very important part, which is around the managed data governance. When we expose any data set, for self-service, one of the key critical element is around the metadata. How do people even know, what this data element is? What does it mean? And so it also comes with a very, well-managed data governance part in terms of even managing the definitions, the glossary, and all that. Right. So why we, build this, the low-code framework? One primary reason is around time to market. For you to have an application up and running, it's in a matter of minutes to a few days, especially when it goes to very large enterprises, setting up the data pipeline and all that. And everything else, just kind of comes out of the box. It is almost like, or rather, I would say, a significant portion of the time is spent in just building the data pipeline, and then getting the hooks to Kia, to the data sets and all that. Rest of the stuff, it comes, pretty much comes out of the box. Again, yeah, another list of, just summarize the features, which again, I'll quickly show you. So just to sum it up, what does Kia bring? It's a simple conversational interface, with the ability to ask questions in the language you speak, right? So, and of course, it is completely built on Azure. Even though it is cloud agnostic, it's most of the implementations happens on, using the underlying Azure, whether it is for language understanding services, speech services, and of course, the Azure cloud infrastructure, and the search and other database, right? And whenever we provide, or rather, whenever we talk about this kind of solution, one of the common question which is raised by customers is around, hey, all these things are good, but how good is accuracy, right? I think, how good is the speech transcription? How good is the language understanding and all that? I think that's where some of the Azure services, there are some study which say it's as close to human comprehension level. I mean, I would say extremely, we are able to achieve very, very high levels of, accuracy, both in speech transcription as well as the language understanding part and all that, right? So with this, let me quickly jump into a demo. Just give me 1 second. Just one confirmation. Hope you can still see my screen. Bharat or somebody, can you just confirm you're able to see Kia Studio?
Yes, you are.
Yes, you are.
Okay,
We
great.
can see it.
Thanks. So this is what we call as our the Kia Studio, or the application which we use to train Kia on different data sets. Say for example, the way it works is if I have to onboard or set up a data pipeline or onboard a new data set, it just goes like this. You have these different options. I can either as simple as connect a CSV, or connect to a database, or even through an app. Even you can hook a REST endpoint to this, and Kia would be able to consume the data from that endpoint on a continuous basis, and then that is one way or multiple ways in which you can connect to data sets, right? So once you have set up something like this, say for example, if I take this particular data set, you can see. So these are the different data elements I have, and of course the types, and then there is quite a bit of stuff. You all have an ability to define your own filters, and and so this is basically the data set which is trained. And I mean, as I said, it's what I have here is for the demo. Some of them are like relatively small, but it goes up to some of our implementations. It goes up to millions of rows and all that, right? Say, let me quickly show you, once you have onboarded a data set like this, right? Let me quickly show you how the experience really is. So this is, now I'm just going to, I told you there is a viewer application, there is a chat application and all that, right? So this is basically a chat application. So if I want to start a new thread and then have a conversation like this, right? Say, yeah, I have one here. So before I even ask the question, let me just set some context in terms of what this data set is, right? So this is basically a data set on sales related data, across different, cities, basically a bunch of, order information, with sales, quantity, I mean, the discount, and there's so many other attributes here, right? Profit and all that. In fact, when you onboard a data set like this, Kia also gives you a whole bunch of questions, which you can try. Or rather, let me go and ask a very simple one here. So start. So I'm just trying to find, okay, show me. So yeah, so let me start with a very simple one like this. Like profit. Okay, so it's going to give me, hey, these are the ones. So now I'm just looking at, yeah, this is by profit. Say for example, I have a very specific time period in mind, right? So something like this. So in the last quarter of say 2019, right? So now it's going to apply this time filter, and it's going, you can see that the last quarter it has applied those time zone, and then it gives you the data. So there are a few things which I just wanted to talk about. One is there is I mean, in fact, since I'm sharing the voice part for the microphone and the speaker for this meeting, there is a voice response which comes along with it. It, in fact, Kia kind of responds both in voice as well as text, and in rich visuals. At the same time, look at, this is what I was talking about more from the discoverability point of view, right? So it gives you the number of cities, what is the average profit, and then how many really contributed to this. And in addition to that, right? I mean, so now you have the underlying data which is really being used to produce this response. And there are a few other stuff, which you can do. Either if you want to change the visualization type, view the underlying data and all that. And let me give you one part of it. Say for example, let me ask another question. Say it's more like say sales in the second quarter of 2019. Right? So it gives me this, the second quarter is kind of highlighted. At the same time, it also asks me, hey, you know what, you're talking about numeric, or rather, a particular metric called sales. It just comes up with some smart follow-ups. Hey, would you like to break it down by this? I mean, it has here has an understanding of what would be some of the popular, or rather, key categories, within the categorical variables within this data set. So it's asking me, hey, would you like to say, let me say, I just want to break it down by the ship mode, right? So now, it gives me that same second quarter 2019 data. It is, giving me the ability to, continue. So now, having said this, right? Say for example, and of course, these are all very similar to a search engine experience. Kia remembers your recent questions, and also, you have an ability to filter it by different topic and all that, right? So now let me say for example, and if in this particular one, I'm looking at this, and I feel that something is not right, right? What I could do is, the way, how do we normally do this today, right? I mean, I might take a screenshot of this and then, put it in an email and then say, I see that one of my sales manager is responsible for this, and I see that, this number doesn't look good, or I have a question, which I really need to ask somebody to take an action and all that, right? That is the way the way we would achieve that today is, hey, I can take a snapshot of this, send it to somebody as in the email. They may take their own sweet time, to respond back, and then, this exchange goes back and forth. Instead, what I could do is, I can invite somebody, say for example, one of my team member here, say Alex, I can invite them to this conversation. Okay. So now, Alex and myself and Kia, we can have this conversation. Say for example, I can ask him, hey, so I hope Alex is there. So, I mean, this is the way that this whole conversation kind of happens, in the sense now, if I have a question, both of us, we see the same data, yeah, so he's responding, it's, I mean, we have eliminated this thing. So so I can ask, hey, so I mean, just this is just a sample conversation. Now, what it really helps is, it's more like one, definitely saves time and money, and then your ability to, for both of you, to see both of the, I mean, I can invite as many users as possible to this conversation, right? All of us have, or rather, look at the same data, and he can also now ask questions, and then he can be part of this conversation, and then on this particular data set or this particular problem, which we are working on in one place, right? I think that is one way which I was also talking in the sense, all the analytics or all the needs of the analytics kind of converges within Kia. So this is one of the example, where say a discussion thread kind of helps. The other thing is, so now I see that, hey, I really do, I really want to this number. I would say, for example, I want to give it as an action item to Alex, or add, right? So you have an ability to add as many integrations as possible. Say, one example we have is, hey, as is a Notion, I can create an action item or a task, to-do task, for Alex, and then assign it to him right from within Kia. And the integrations, we have a whole bunch of integrations. It could be as simple as, say, you are looking at the CRM data, and then so you're looking at, hey, for this particular, say that the question is, if it is on a specific region, some product is not really doing well. If you want to run a campaign, you could integrate it with, say, something like a HubSpot or your Salesforce, campaign manager and all that. So basically, the way we had envisioned was, one is getting access to data, or rather, getting answers. At the same time, one, how do we collaborate within the platform itself? The second thing is, how do we really make it actionable, right? With all these kind of integrations, right? And of course, there are a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, just like how you have, there is a whole bunch of you have the conversation threads. You have an ability to save certain things, and then I'll just talk about one important stuff, which is what we call as a storyboard. So I also told you there is the other version of the same application, which is the web widget. So let me go to the search widget interface for the same data set. Okay. So here, I mean, the same questions, whatever I asked there, they also appear here. It's just that here, this widget, it comes in a search widget form. This part could be embedded in any application. And again, as I said, this is also completely white labeled application and all that, right? So now imagine, I have a sales meeting coming tomorrow, and then, I'm working on a presentation. Say I'm responsible for, say, the West region, okay, and I have to submit my sales metrics. So let me give a scenario like this and say, okay, so now I can ask, hey, so I start with something like this. Oh, hey, this is the way it is. So what I do is I can create something called this. I ask a whole bunch of questions. Say, okay, so I can filter down to a particular state. Now I also say, hey, so now it helps me break down the sales number by, say, a particular dimension. Now I'm also looking at, hey, so it's by, it's asking ship mode by what, so I'm just saying, hey, by the number of orders. So now it's going to be, hey, standard class is the most commonly one used. So basically, I just go like this. I'm doing a lot of analysis. Now, as I said, I have, say, a sales meeting tomorrow, and then, I have to present something. What do we normally do to the way we approach it? Hey, we take screenshots of this, put it in a PowerPoint presentation or keynote, and then, we do that. So we have, I mean, Kia comes up with a very interesting concept, we call it as a live dashboards. It's, can we really go the bottom up approach of building what we call as a storyboard, right? So say, let me start with something like this, right? So yeah, I ask this question, it gives me this data. So now what I do is I create something called this, so I create something and then say that I add my own annotation, because I can really use this. Now, basically what I'm doing is I'm creating a storyboard, which I'm going to use it for my presentation tomorrow, right? So I can say that. So I mean, all kinds of rich text formatting it could do. I add this. So now, now I also say that since I'm responsible for, say, a particular region, say a state like California, I ask this question. So now, I just get another. So I add it to the, the same storyboard. So I go and then, I keep adding something like this, and then say by, say, shape mode, and then it goes like this, right? So I add it here. So what happens is, all these stuff, you have something called as storyboard. So this is the one, which you just created. You can use Kia to do a presentation. In fact, as you see here, it is almost like, I'm in a slideshow mode. I could run, this presentation just out of Kia itself. The key difference here is these are not, unlike, the way we might do it in a presentations, it's like images. All these are basically live data. And this live data, as you are presenting, it could even connect to the data source, get it refreshed, and say, this is the next one. And by the way, I mean, we also have the option, an ability to, Kia would read out, Kia would act like a presenter, and you can ask those questions as well, right? In the voice prompt. So this I could basically run a presentation like this, just out of Kia, what we really call is the storyboard. I mean, as I said, the key difference here is all these are basically, live data, not static or rather time dated images, which we normally embed in our presentations. So this is one very, very common, or rather, very heavily used by some of our customers as well in a feature, what we call, is called as a storyboard. So now, if you really contrast this to the way I had started, what we call is dead by metrics, which is you have an ability, or rather today we are consuming is through so many other dashboards. Some of those dashboards may not have the metric, or rather, the question you may have. So what we have just completely reversed that process, right? Rather now provide the users, provide your frontline users with an ability, rather than providing them a dashboard. Why don't we just give them the ability to ask whatever question you want? In fact, by the way, all these, for this particular example, which we are talking about the sales, you can ask any kind of questions on the data attribute. There is absolutely no limit to it right now. What with this storyboard concept, basically what we have done is you are providing this ability to your frontline users where they have this ability to build a story based on their need, in terms of they are not just confined to a static dashboard, which they may have today, right? So that is one very powerful feature which we have introduced within K, basically trying to change the way in which data could be consumed as well as used for sharing or collaboration and presenting it to others and all that. So this is just one example of a data sets, right? I mean, there are like so many. I mean, say for example, we use Kia itself uses Kia. Say for example, if I have to, even how Kia is being used today, right? The questions on how many questions are asked and all these, who's asking those questions, everything is. So this is something like, hey, say I ask, hey, questions. So it just breaks down, the number of questions it was answered by Kia today, and then so now I ask a question. I ask it something like this. See, look at this, right? This is an example of a true conversational approach. I mean, I just asked this question, how about this week, using a pronoun. I didn't even ask, in terms of what. So, what exactly I'm this week. I mean, what measure are we really talking about, right? So now, having a context of, we just talking about the questions, right? So Kia is now asking me, hey, did you mean questions this week? Right? So this is one example of, I said yes, and then now it's going to give me the same data for this particular week, right? So this is one example in terms of what we really call as a true conversations. As you keep talking to Kia, it builds a deep context on what we are talking about, who you are, what you asked in the previously, all these kind of, it's really used just like a typical human conversation experience. The more you are talking to somebody, I mean, I think the next time when you speak to them, they have a deeper context. Hey, you know what? This is what we are talking about. Perhaps we can continue from there, and then or rather, that kind of experience is what we are also trying to replicate here within Kia. It has it is able to continue a conversation with these deep context and all that, right? Any questions on whatever I just showed in Kia, in terms of its ability to respond to questions and all that? Okay. So those are all some of the examples, in terms of how we could, or rather for, I mean, as I said, there are like so many other examples here, in terms of, say, this is another one, it's a data set on basically, it's like this. It is in fact, from a customer call center logs in terms of why people are really calling a call center, and then it's say if I have to use this to ask some questions like this, right? Say, let me go here. So yeah, I mean, I can ask questions like this, so total number of issues, say I mean, there's a customer call like financial. What are people really calling about? So it is actually financial institution. So they say, by vehicle loan, and then it is still broken down by different sub products and all that. So again, based on the question, right? So say this is about issues for a particular financial institution, and we're also breaking it down by a product. So it smartly picks different visualizations, and then say if this is not what you like, you have an option to change the visualization types and all that. So this is again, I mean, the long story short, it is basically Kia is completely agnostic to the underlying data. Any data sets, as I said, through any of these means, whether it is very simple file formats. I mean, we are adding more file formats like say whether it is JSON, Pocket, Avro, and all that, and or you connect to a database, or it could be straight from an app, and you feed into data and then feed the data into Kia, and then immediately you start asking questions. That is the whole idea behind this this particular application, or our conversational AI BI solution. Any questions on the demo? I mean, just last few slides. With that, we could end this session. So yeah, I was talking about the Azure infrastructure, or the way what is beneath or underlying technology, or used in Kia and all that. Some of our happy customers, we have had quite a few installations. I mean, some of the common ones, which I would highlight as say BCAs and MBH, Mars Veterinary Health, very large pet care provider where the doctors use this interface. I mean, it is called Oscar. His medical record, they just ask questions, in very, very simple English constructs. Hey, show me the pets that were treated for a particular medical condition, in certain region and all that. The challenge there, we had there was more around, it's not just simple English, right? I mean, in different domains, like whether it is insurance, healthcare and all, they have their own vocabulary. In the case of, the pet care space, it was more around how would the application understand something like a medical vocabulary, drug names and all that. And then, you have various abbreviations. Somebody could say 10 milligrams, somebody could say 10 mg and all these, right? I think those are all, again, something which is very, very, critical design aspects, which we take care in an application like this. And of course, another one is around Daimler. There, the challenge was around a lot of engineering aspects, right? Many of the automobile parts and all that. So summary, definitely, as I said, it is with our low code framework and all, definitely, it's you can get an application up and running in very, very short period of time. And of course, we have a lot of these building blocks or platform accelerators, which really help you get started on an exercise like this, in a very, very short period of time, right? So yeah, I mean, would be more than happy if, even to engage in a very simple POC, or even a follow-up discussion. Please do. If you really need a lot more deeper insights, in terms of how the technology is, perhaps we can even set up follow-up sessions. Here are a couple of email IDs, which you can reach us. Right? And here is a summary, in the sense why we even built, or rather, why Kia. It's just around making it very simple, smart. As I said, there is quite a bit of AI elements underneath, and anything to do with data. Definitely, our design is primarily focused on secure by design, and yeah, that's the whole idea around, can we really simplify, or rather, make clarity come out, very easily in a very, very large data sets. That is the whole idea. So that's about today's session. I mean, if there are questions, I can take now. All right. So that's about it, everyone. Again, thanks for your time. Hope it was useful. And as I said, any follow up, anything, please feel free to reach out to us. Those email IDs. And thank you for your time today. Have a good day.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining in.